Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where you might be wondering where our Moho lander is, and the answer is I deorbited it. I think that we need to bring that guy back to the drawing board a little bit. We need definitely more fuel in that upper stage. There's no doubt about that, and I want to make a few modifications to the other stages as well. So first things first, let's open it up. I deorbited it, and we ended up losing quite a lot of money from that, but I decided to do that off camera just so that we could get moving on this, right? Now, first things first, we don't need these landing struts up here. We're going to ditch those, definitely. So that's dead weight, and I'm thinking about ditching Cherenkovs here and downgrading them from Cherenkovs to being something along the lines of quad... Where's the other nuclear engine? Nerves. There we go. So quad nerves, like this. That buys us a lot more space for fuel up here, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put in... Do we have the space for Jumbo 64s? Arguably. I think we're better off doing 32s. And then a 16. And then putting in the nerves. Now the question is, when we go to land this, what's that going to look like for Delta V over Moho? So stage 4 here, or rather stage 2 here, is currently showing as 0 Delta V. That's clearly inaccurate. Okay, so this is all a little bit messed up right now. Now, this is currently a Cherenkov atomic rocket motor here. That's fine. I'm thinking about moving this fuel up top and basically combining these two stages together is what I'm thinking about doing. So we would move this fuel to be drop tanks out here, like this. Then, if that's there, then we would probably end up ditching a fair amount of this trellis here that we've got going on, because we would end up, instead of having this, like this, we would end up having our landing struts being out here, right? So I would rotate these to be like this, and we would just place something like 3 of these on each of these outside areas, although it's pretty clear that we can maybe squeeze a 4th one in. Oh yeah, we definitely can. So this guy would go like here. Okay, so it would be something like that. Now we don't need this weight, and I'm wondering about these modular girder segments. I suspect that they are also unnecessary. So we would do something like this. I'm a little bit concerned about this sticking down. So maybe we would still have 1 modular girder segment here as a spacer, like that. Now we're going to have to do some strutting, no doubt about this. And this fuel I would like to move up. We're going to ditch the Cherenkov. That's going to go away. This fuel is going to get moved up into this stage here, ideally. Well, maybe. That's going to be a lot of height. It's a Jumbo 64. We could simply take these hemispherical fuel tanks off and move it up by putting 16s here, and that's now the same amount of fuel. We would ditch the oxidizer here, of course. And these would ditch oxidizer. These would ditch oxidizer. So that saves us a lot of weight. Now the question is, what is our Delta V here? We need to, for the time being, I'm going to move these guys down to here. What is our Delta V, or rather our thrust to weight over Moho? So stage 4, stage 5. 0.33? Okay, so a lot of this fuel will be gone by the time we get there. So the outside tanks, yeah, it would be flowing kind of like this. The outside tanks would be bone dry by the time we land on this, ideally. So it would be something kind of like this, and that would put us at 0.53. The inside tank here would also be dry, 0.55. Okay, I want to make sure that these are set to being correctly colored. There we go, something kind of like that. Now, the main question here is, do we need to go with Cherenkovs? And I think the answer might actually be yes. But if we're not having that middle stage, it's going to be mildly awkward. But I think we can still make it work. So the idea would be that we would come into our engines here. We would put in Cherenkovs here. Oh, I really, really dislike the height on that. Okay, so these are going to have to be dropped down in altitude. Bring us out in the local direction. Thank you very much. These would have to be dropped down enough. Okay, that doesn't want to be attached there. So we'd have to change the place tool. And we'd have to attach them, like, down here. Something like that. Now, bringing this up, of course, there's going to be a small space issue. So we're going to add in a Rockamax Jumbo 64 back in here. That one is going to be as a spacer. Like that. And then we can store some additional fuel there, which can be used to refuel this center core, which, of course, we're going to want to have this fully good to go. Now, I want to check with this core empty and this decoupled, right? So when we're like this, these guys are going to need to be able to be dropped down, and that's something that we will definitely do in a moment. With all of this set up like so, I want to move these guys down to here, and we can see 3.66. So this would be able to land on Moho. Beautiful. It's a giant mess, no doubt about that. What is this thrust to weight? 1.68? That's actually better than it was. That's slightly surprising to me. But I suppose we have dropped a Cherenkov and consolidated together a bunch of the fuel, right? So that's reasonably fine. Now, I want to deal with these drill-o-matics, and the way that we're going to do that is by putting in... Let's see, we're going to do a modular girder segment here. We're going to do 2 of them. Not 4, if I can get in there with just 2, by going like this and sneaking in. There we go. We're going to put in 2 modular girder segments like so. Then we're going to need to have an extender down here. So an extension arm would be a robotics arm, something like the... Which one of these is going to be good? The 1P4 might reach enough. I don't know if it will. So that guy would go there like that. And then we would need to extend that out. Yeah, that's not going to be far enough of an extension. Okay, so we'll go with like the 3P6. That can extend down. No, that's not the one I wanted either. 3PT. This one. Yeah, that can extend far enough. Beautiful. So we're going to do something kind of like that, and then we're going to put on another modular girder segment here. Now, keep in mind, this tank will be gone by the time we get here. So we'll put that in like that. I'm going to change the positioning on it to be down a bit, in a bit, and kind of like this. Cool. And then we would attach our drill-o-matic there, facing this direction. Something like that. It's not perfectly positioned here. It is definitely not perfectly positioned. But if we were to extend this out, we can see... Let's see. Surface, asteroid, and comet harvester? That's interesting. We're definitely going to drop this guy. Oh, yeah. We've got plenty of reach like that. So that should be fine. So we'll retract that drill, and now I'm going to go into dual symmetry, and we'll just do that to make sure that we have one over here on this side as well. Okay, now I want to check in. Our radiators should probably end up being moved. I'm just thinking about where we're going to have space. We're going to be running into these Cherenkovs here. We could simply put in a radiator here. That might do the trick. If it doesn't, we can always move it on the ground. So that would be fine. We want to... Oh, we have no real way to get in here with 2, do we? Is there a hotkey for this to change the symmetry count? Probably. I don't know it. I suppose we could just have 4. I guess that works. And we've got this relay antenna that does not necessarily need to exist since we have these dual antennas up here, which we don't need 2 of them, to be honest. We're just going to bump that right on down to only 1. There we go. And otherwise, we're going to need to check our staging here. But this should be a much more efficient design, in theory. This should be significantly more efficient. So we're going to check our staging here. This all looks good. And then that detaches. Right. This detachment, we're probably going to manually trigger. So I'm going to move that up above the parachutes here. And these are both drogue chutes. Yeah. Okay. So these engines are going to trigger when that all detaches. That all looks good. These are going to detach on the way back, right? Because we're going to flow the fuel inward, and then they'll exhaust their fuel after our landing, and they'll detach. That's all fine. I want to make sure that these are snapped into position. Do we have snapping on? We do. Okay. So those 2 are good. Small snap there, and no snap there. Okay, cool. So that all looks fine. This will detach on the way back. That will detach when we take off. So that'll actually go here and detach like that. We're going to be leaving this stuff on the surface. So this stuff here would remain on the surface. It'll probably end up being balanced on the drill-o-matics, which is fine. That's okay. That'll be left on the surface. We're going to be coming back with this up here. So we'll detach these guys. We'll flow the fuel out of this center tank, and then we'll detach these once we no longer need engines. So that all looks correct. Yes, that all looks phenomenal. Okay, so we're going to put our crew back in here. This was going to be Valentina, Staney, and Luke. Cool. So we're going to put this back into orbit. I'm not going to make you watch the very agonizingly slow launch of this craft again, but we'll just double check 1.67. Yup, that all looks phenomenal, and this is a much, much better setup for us, I think. So we're going to save and launch this, and I'll just pause the recording here, and we'll come back once we are back in our 150-kilometer orbit, like the previous version. See you guys in just a moment. Okay, we're not in space yet. I'm back in the VAB here because I remembered that we didn't fill up these tanks with liquid fuel. That is why we were lighter than expected. We're at 1.57, so we're going to put this back out on the pad, and this time I'm going to launch it. I've gone through and checked all of these tanks off camera here, so we should be completely good to go. See you guys in just a bit. Okay, so here we are back in orbit, approximately where we were before, circularized at about 150 kilometers. So that is all great. You'll see I have opened these 2 tanks here because we're going to manually transfer from this tank to this tank as we burn these engines. We got here a little bit more efficiently than last time, which is not surprising considering the ascent profile last time. We've got 265 extra meters per second in this tank. It's not a huge amount, but it's helpful, to be sure. Now, this is saying we have 7,500 meters per second. I think we actually have more than that, but let's just go ahead and hop into MechJeb. That's the maneuver node editor. Hang on. Maneuver planner, where we are going to get ourselves an advanced transfer over to Moho here. I want to see what MechJeb comes up with for Delta V at this point. So we'll set target and include the capture burn, 5820. That's probably doable. We probably have... What do we think we have in this tank? 500? Maybe? I don't know. We'll see. For now, let's align to that node. And we're going to have MechJeb execute this node, I think. Well, we're going to run into the same problem as we did before, I think. We'll create the node, and... it's an 8-minute burn? Okay. We'll give it a go. Now, as far as this capture burn goes, is that going to circularize us at 100 kilometers, or is that just angling to capture us? That's angling to circularize. Okay. So with us being circularized at 100 kilometers, that's probably reasonably fine. We should have plenty of delta V to do that. Although, if we really wanted to be clever here, we would set this to be lower, more like about 30 kilometers. And that's actually less delta V by a pretty wide margin. Well, that's because it's going to be slightly lower on the drop. Let's actually see what it would be at for 15 kilometers. Lowest delta V is now saying 49.11. Cool. So we're going to execute that. Let's orient to that node. Oh, I want to point out I did turn off the gimbaling on this engine because it was wiggling around. So that gimbal is off, but that will only be around for 265 meters per second on this burn, right? So that's okay. This is going to be 2397 here. Definitely a bit long of a burn. And it's going to be in 229 days. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, once again, we're going to cut out the delay on this burn. We're going to start our warp here pretty soon, I think. MechJeb is just trying to get us onto the node there. That's absolutely fine. We're going to start up our warp here, and we're just going to let this go, and we'll come back close to the end of this burn. This is going to be a tediously long burn, so we'll see what MechJeb comes up with. See you guys in a minute. Okay, so here we are partway through this burn, and I just wanted to give a quick update here. It would appear that we are pulling from the outer tanks first, and then pulling from the inner tank after the outer tanks are cleared up. So I'm moving the fuel from this tank here, which we do want to ditch fairly soon. I'm moving the fuel from this tank into these bottom tanks here. So we've got some uneven fuel usage here, but that is the plan here for now. Now we'll be back after we're done with this burn in a few minutes. See you guys in a moment. Oh, I also moved around a couple of struts up here because I was concerned about these not being strutted in. So I grabbed struts that were connecting these here and moved them to here with staining. So that is something that did occur. So there we go. We are done with this update, and I'll see you guys after this burn. Okay, so here we are very, very close to the end of the burn, and we've got about 12 seconds left. MechJeb is still executing this, so that's absolutely fine. We'll let MechJeb finish the execution here. So, as you can see here, we have ditched our center tank here. We fully burned that out, and we dropped that tank, so we're no longer carrying that weight. I'm going to let MechJeb do this node chasing that it's doing here. I turned these gimbals back on to help us turn a little bit because we were turning a little slowly, but we also moved all of the fuel out of this tank. So we're now at about 1,000 fuel in each of these, and we can see our current delta V is about 6,600. I believe that to be the quote-unquote real number at this point. So I don't think there's anything that we're doing that the game would be really, really confused about. So that's great. Now, I wonder how MechJeb did with this burn. We have a bit of a connection here, but we don't quite have a rendezvous. Now, we still need 1 meter per second here. MechJeb is chasing this node, and we will let it do that. But I don't know how much of an alteration we're going to have to do to this trajectory to get this encounter, right? That's the real question here, and it's going to be a big Delta V event for circularizing, but that's only about 2,000 Delta V. We've got 6,000 here. I'm actually a little concerned that we might be overkill on our Delta V at this point, and we might not have the thrust to weight over Moho, but I think we'll have the thrust to weight. Okay. 0.3, 0.2, and MechJeb is chasing the node again. So let's physics warp while it chases this node. We'll get there eventually. There we go. The node changes quite a bit when we physics warp. So at this point, we're just going to let it go. So, 0.2 meters per second. Now, to be clear, I'm not shocked that we are apparently not getting an encounter here. Well, this is a Moho encounter in 97 days. Is that based on the next event here, though? I don't know. So let's let MechJeb get this last little bit done. 0.1 seconds of burn time left here. Okay, so MechJeb is calling that good enough. Now, this is not what we want, for sure. So we're going to have to do a bit of a corrective burn. Let's make a correction around here. And the question is, how do we need to correct this? Actually, that's really close. We can just dial it in like that. And then we need to get ourselves... Ooh, that's very, very tough. Okay, I think we need to change our inclination here, most likely. Yeah, we definitely need to change our inclination. So we're targeting about 30 kilometers here. Or thereabouts. So once we get to about this point, I don't care too much about the actual resulting inclination. I just want to move us in here. So what do we need for a corrective burn of approximately 30 kilometers? So far, this is looking like under 100 meters per second. So given our remaining delta V at this point, I'm not concerned about that. We had a lot of delta V in those two center tanks that I think the game was not correctly calculating. So we should be fine on this. In fact, this might be enough to get us home without a refueling trip, but we're going to refuel nevertheless. We don't need the MechJeb maneuver planner anymore. It got us most of the way here, but the 88.8 meters per second here will manually do, for sure. So that's going to be in about 5 days. Thrust to weight is 0.5 over Kerbin with this. I think we're going to be fine over Moho, to be honest. So let's warp on forward this 5 days, and goodbye, Kerbin. We will be back. Beautiful. So we're going to get our corrective burn now that we are over Kerbal instead of Kerbin. And let's get that corrective burn underway here. Did this change on us? It sure did. Okay. So now that we're out of here, we'll just try this again. No, don't set that as target. Set this as target. I want to create a maneuver about here. And we know that we needed a little bit of prograde to squeak us on in here. And a little bit of radial as well. So something kind of like that. And then once we had the actual encounter, we made that encounter quite a lot bigger, like so. And then we can dial back a bit on the prograde. This is a very, very polar orbit that we're looking at here. So I'm just dialing this back a little bit and making it more equatorial. It doesn't have to be perfectly equatorial, but now that we're doing this from the sphere of influence of Kerbal rather than Kerbin, this shouldn't, in theory, be an issue. So let's align to the node. This one's going to be in 3 days, and hopefully this one won't change on us. But we won't have a sphere of influence change, so I'm not expecting one to. This is actually a little bit cheaper of an encounter. So I guess arguably that's better, but I am still a little bit concerned about our thrust to weight once we get there. That said, we're going to have a big burn event here. There's no doubt about that. So let's commence our burn here in about a minute. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and mark. Cool. It's about a 13-second burn. So, I mean, as far as corrective burns go, this isn't a bad one. I definitely expected this to be a bigger corrective burn. Okay, we're just going to get that last little bit in here relatively cautiously. Hang on. Which direction do we want to come in at? Do we want to be going this way, or do we want to be going this way? Either way, we're going to be going fast, right? So it's going to be this way or this way. So orbiting this direction or orbiting this direction. It's tidally locked, which means it's going to be facing this way, which means that as it travels this direction, it will orbit this direction, which means this is actually good where we're at right now. It's 41 kilometers rather than the, 30. Oh, yeah. That's not ideal. So let's bring this guy right on around. I've overshot this. Going to physics warp this a bit, and we're going to bring this guy right on around to the other side. It's very, very sensitive at this angle. So right around here-ish. We'll say 50 kilometers is good enough for now. Okay, so 50 kilometers, I think we're going to be going the right direction. Let's double check that. So I'm warping forward here, and we're looking to see what direction this is going. It's tidally locked, right? So it is going this way. This way here. We're going to be going this way. So we actually do need to flip this around. Okay. So let's do exactly that. Let's pop back out over here. I just don't want to be going retrograde, right? That's unnecessary delta V. So let's pop over this direction. In 7 days is fine. And let's just flip this encounter right on around. That's going to require a very minuscule amount of DV. Our original direction was actually correct. So let's bring this guy right on over. 23 kilometers. Sure. But I'm going to bring it down a little bit. 50 kilometers. Okay. Something like this should do. So now we should be traveling, in theory, anyway, the correct direction. We'll align to this node, 0.8 meters per second. So I'm going to thrust limit all of these engines down to like 1.5%. We need to have them all be the same. Okay, 1.5. There we go. So that's now a 10-second burn. We're aligned for this burn, and honestly, we can do it now. It doesn't matter to wait the 7 days. So we'll get that burn going here. Cool. And we'll just flip this right on around. Very gently burning it. There. 20 kilometers is, I think, fine. So at 20 kilometers, at the periapsis here, we're going to need to do quite a braking burn. We know that this is going to be hefty. We've got 5,300 meters per second here, so I'm not too concerned about that. This is going to end up burning out almost half of our fuel. But honestly, we're doing way better on fuel than I expected. So this is fine. We had a lot of fuel that I think that the game just wasn't counting, which is fair enough. This was set up in a very strange way, right? So that's, I suppose, completely unexpected. Or not completely unexpected. It is completely expected. So we're going to unthrust limit all of these. There we go. That's now down to now down to a 6-minute burn. That's not too bad. Now we are going to run out of fuel on these outer tanks here, but we do not want to ditch them. We want to keep the tanks around. So we're going to align for this burn. The burn's going to be in about 92 days. At this point, I think it is past time to put a cut in here, though. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to get this burn done. And we're going to get these guys landed on Moho. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Shadow Wolf, Mlohan80, Rogue Corvid, Kintogan, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, that's the word I'm looking for, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.